Hello, Rusty. Do you hear me? Rusty. Magandang gabi po mga kababayan. Nandito na naman po kami para talakayin ang undercounting ng extrajudicial killings. Maghintay-hintay po lamang tayo at pasok na tayo sa ating paksa maya-maya.
Art, marami kang picture sa kanan.
Nakita ko na.
Good luck, good luck. I don't know with that. Parang frozen thing, Rusty.
Si Rusty, hindi kami magkarinigan.
Just go ahead. Parang frozen siya.
Hmm.
Hello.
Oh, yeah.
Hello
I
there.
can.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Sorry, I had an audio problem a while ago.
That's okay. Sorry, I was speaking in Tagalog, so maybe you can understand me.
Yes,
Now
yes,
we
I
can
can.
start.
I just don't speak in Tagalog myself, but I can understand it. You can talk to me in straight Tagalog. I just answer in English. I
Oh,
hope
yeah.
that'll be okay with your audience.
Yeah, I know. I've seen you a long time ago. Uh, when you have
Oh,
when you were in the Philippines. I can hear you.
oh, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Did
that's
have
it.
we met in person? Have
No,
we
not
ever met?
yet. I just can hear you as a spokesman.
Ah, okay. I was formerly the spokesperson of San Lakas.
Yeah,
Yes, that's right.
uh,
How may I call you? Are you Art?
art. Yeah, art.
Art, okay. I'm Rusty. You may call
Yeah.
me Rusty. Thank
Okay.
you, Art.
So how can we go? I'll just put in the general run of things in the private chat, and if it's okay, we still have
Okay,
5 minutes. One.
all right. Since this is my first time here, Art, I'm not
Mm.
very familiar with your format and your uh, outline for this podcast. So, if I'm supposed to just answer any questions straightforwardly, I'm okay with that.
So basically, the first question is, what is the undercount in the EJK?
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, okay. Although I have to be honest with you, I don't have the exact figures myself
That I can
because
help
they.
you because we have
Okay.
a count. We have our own
Okay.
count. Para
Be,
is doing our own count, but
okay.
we do not say that it is the best. But at least we count it every day, and for the veracity we check it with other
All
data.
right.
So up to now we have 36,090
Okay. And
counting. We started counting May 16, 2022.
all right. And I suppose, Art, that your Farah's latest count is based on a consolidated report of the various statistics coming from the different human rights organizations in the Philippines.
Yes,
Okay.
but
The reason why I said that is because even among the human rights organizations here, the counts may vary, but it's not a wide disparity. It's
yes.
minimal. However, the greater disparity is with the Philippine state. The
Oh
Philippine
yeah,
state count is always, as you say, undercounted. That's the issue.
yes, because they only consider the 6,000.
Yes, correct,
They stop counting in the 6,000. Number two is
correct.
still yeah. The next question we will answer is is there still EJK under Marcos rule? because the
Okay.
Secretary of Justice said otherwise.
Okay.
And then the last are the details. We will discuss the detail because the findings. I forgot the name of the organization. A lawyers group have proven that there is an undercount, and they are saying it because most of the persons killed, around 70 or 80, are have proven otherwise. The police changes the death certificate from from uh, gunshot wound to to natural causes like flu and other diseases, and it was proven with the death of a child, Lenin Bailon in Caloocan, whose death certificate was changed from gunshot wound to flu in another person, and the families were forced uh, to go with it because they cannot get the body. They have to pay 11,000.
I understand.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's how we will go. Okay.
All right.
So
Thank you
we'll
very much,
start
Art.
now. Okay.
Okay.
So I'll ask you to greet our audience and tell who you are, and then we will start. So I will do it in Tagalog. So yeah. Magandang gabi po mga kababayan. Ito muli si Arthur Garcia mula dito sa Los Angeles. Papakilala ko ang ating bisita, si Rusty Deliso, upang he can explain who he is. So, Rusty, come in, please.
Hello there, Art, and to all of your viewers here in your Nomad podcast. My name is Rusty Delizo, and I'm happy to guest here. This is my first time to have been invited. I am a longtime socialist activist here in the Philippines, but by professional training, I'm an international affairs analyst. And currently, I am a vice president of the Bukluran ng Manggagawang Pilipino, or BMP. BMP is a revolutionary socialist political center of the Filipino working class here in the Philippines. Once again, good evening and good day.
Si Rusty, hindi siya bihasa gano'ng magtagalog, pero naintindihan niya kung ano ang mga tanong, kaya magtanong lang po kayo mag-alala. Kaya pagpapatuloy natin ang ating programa. Ang programa po natin ay yung undercount sa extrajudicial killing sa Pilipinas. Ano masasabi mo rito, Rusty? Totoo ba may undercount o hindi maganda ang bilang ng EJK ng ating gobyerno?
That's correct, Art. Ever since 2016, when the Rodrigo Duterte regime came to power, and I would actually call it state-sanctioned killings and executions, if not state-sanctioned assassinations, have risen. The state security forces, whether it be the armed forces of the Philippines, the Philippine National Police, or even their intelligence services, have all consistently been given the Philippine media and the Philippine public a consistent undercount. Nevertheless, human rights organizations, both inside the country and even abroad, continue to report a wide disparity between their count and the Philippine state count. In fact, the Philippine state count as of today, if I'm not mistaken, I'm sorry, I don't have the latest actual statistics, but they range from 6,000 to 8,000 at the most, so below 10,000. Nevertheless, human rights organizations such as the Philippine Alliance of Human Rights Advocates, PARA, the Task Force Detainees of the Philippines, TFDP, Karapatan, and even organizations such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch continue to report figures above 25,000 since 2016, and some figures even go beyond 30,000 at this as of today. And tomorrow, here in the Philippines, will be December 10. As you know, it'll be the International Human Rights Day, and as such, many human rights activists, human rights defenders, and other progressive forces will be making their presence felt in order to show that nothing has changed here in the Philippines, even or especially so with the new reactionary regime of Bongbong Marcos. In fact, the Bongbong Marcos regime continues to support and extend the state's drug war or anti-drug war, so to speak, against the poor working masses of the country from Batanes to Tawi-Tawi. And this is exactly the aspect and dimension that Philippine state authorities, led by the BBM regime right now, want to hide from the international community so
Yes,
as to maintain their good
yes,
standing.
yes. That is the precisely what Bonjing Rimulya or Department of Justice Rimulya said during the periodic review of the United Nations. He is saying we have taken all the recommendations and the situation is now changed. We have justice in the real time. That's what he's saying, but he would not admit that there has been, according to our data. I'm glad to tell it to you that the Filipino American Human Rights Alliance, when we came into being in 2016, uh, after the burial of Marcos, we started to tally all the debt, and we have reached a total of 36,090, 36090, and that is very different from the undercount that the Philippine National Police is doing. So may I ask you, what do you think is the undercount of the in the case of extrajudicial killing in the Philippines? Do you believe there is an undercount? Undercount?
Yes, Art, definitely. There is certainly an undercount. I cannot, for obvious reasons, at this time give you a definite figure on that. But in general terms, there is. And in fact, many of our comrades here in the Philippines do recognize that the Philippine state has a policy to deliberately undercount not just figures pertaining to the state sanctioned assassinations nationwide, but on other human rights violations cases and issues and concerns also, obviously. So
Why the
clearly,
undercount? What do you think? Why do they undercount it?
well, definitely they are afraid of being so-called blacklisted in terms of having existing economic agreements downturned and pulled out uh, in retaliation for the Philippine state's human rights violation. So clearly, they do not want to admit to the international community and the global public that the Philippine state 36 years now. In two months from now, it'll be 37 years since the fascist Marcos dictatorship was ousted, and they want to continue to um, extend the myth that the Philippines remains a leading democratic state and society here in Southeast Asia, if not in Asia. But clearly, that has not been the case for almost 37 years now. Since the Cory regime came to power in 1986, the Philippine state security forces have been conducting a a counterinsurgency strategy and agenda to basically eliminate, eradicate, and wipe out the Philippine left, Philippine progressive, and Philippine working class based forces. In other words, there is a conscious state policy toward attaining a high degree of counter-revolutionary um, efforts to basically ensure that there will be no open and even legitimate dissent that can question the uh, the elitist, uh, if you may even call plutocratic and even oligarchic economic and security policies, which the Philippine state regime since Cory have been pursuing. And since then, even successor regimes such as Ramos, Erap, Estrada, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, Pinoy Aquino himself, Duterte, and now BBM, all these regimes continue to maintain a pro-US imperialist, pro-capitalist, neoliberal, and fascist agenda here in the Philippines, and
Yeah,
it is
but
a state policy. So
may-
that is the reason why they want to ensure that no organized political dissent will come about to question such policies.
yeah, but we have problems in data. Even the movement, the progressive movement, in the Philippines have a problem in data, especially after the fall of Marcos. During the time of Marcos, there has been tabulation, but it is intermittent and it's not really formal. Imagine the Amnesty International data is being catered by Filipinos, especially in the Philippines. Is how many people have been killed according to Amnesty International? Only 3,500, which is very undercounted. But after Marcos fell, the human rights organization stopped counting the killings during they documented it, but there is no formal really documentation under Aquino, Cory Aquino, and later only after during the Macapagal era when the extrajudicial killing term came out that there was a consistent counting. Yeah, that has been my criticism of the movement ever since. That's why, learning from it, the Philippine American Human Rights Alliance see to it that we really count, because undercounting is always a problem, especially in human rights. That's my opinion and our opinion. That's why we counted it. So we go back to undercounting. As you said, as you explained, they have the tendency to minimize it, to make it appear that the Philippines is still a democratic country. Do you still believe it? Uh, as per your opinion, what do you think? Do you still believe that the Philippines is following the rule of law and as Bongbong Marcos is saying?
Clearly not art, and this is very obvious, and it has been the case for more than 3 decades now. Even during the Cory Aquino regime, massive human rights violations did take place, and these have been a matter of uh, public record, and as such, the Philippine progressive movement, the Philippine left, has been able to actually collate data. Perhaps this data has not been fully determined, but basic data has been generated by organizations such as the task force detainees of the Philippines TFDP since 1986, because it was formed in 1974, 2 years after martial law was declared, and also by the Philippine Alliance of Human Rights Advocates, or PARA. So these these are at least two of the various Philippine-based human rights organizations that have been consistently and, for the record, been collecting and collating statistics with regard to human rights violations of in various forms. But then again, as I said earlier, there are discrepancies, yes. However, the discrepancies between and among the various human rights organizations is not that wide a margin compared to them collectively and the Philippine state statistics, which is obviously very, very wide. And that only shows that the Philippine state continues to lie, not just to its own Filipino public, but to the international public, in order to continue to attract um, positive recognition for mainly economic support, and especially now, as you probably have noticed, Art, that when U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris came to Manila about 2 weeks ago, again at the top of her bilateral talks with President BBM Marcos Jr., human rights was hardly in the picture. Actually, it was not even discussed. What was discussed was the need for U.S. imperialist forces to not just maintain but to extend and expand their military presence here on Philippine soil, in direct violation of the key provisions of the 1987 Constitution, in order to basically counter and check the People's Republic of China within the area. And so, therefore, what the Biden Harris regime in the White House is once more proven and shown is that, similar to all the other U.S. Imperialist regimes since the Truman administration in the late 40s, and ever since, there America has a double standard. To the American public, the U.S. government is very much concerned about human rights violations all across the world. But in terms of actual U.S. foreign policy practice and application, the White House and the State Department will definitely turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to human rights concerns being raised all across the world, especially with regard to close U.S. Imperialist puppet states. I'll put it that way, because U.S. imperialism needs their markets and it needs their bases in order to join the U.S. imperialist-led global war of terror and its global fights against whichever enemy it deems for the moment in world history. So at this point, the Philippines is clearly needed in the new October 2022 U.S. National Strategy Security Strategy paper that was issued just 2 months ago, and therefore the Philippines falls foursquare within this new national security strategy doctrinal agenda. And this is linked to the so-called global NATO strategic concept that was unveiled in June of this year during the NATO Madrid summit. So clearly, human rights is not a concern anymore in terms of America's, you could say, fight or war or conflict against both the People's Republic of China and the Russian Federation at this time.
For our listeners and our viewers, we are discussing the undercount of the cases of the extrajudicial killings in the Philippines. Our guest tonight is Rusty Deliso. From Can you please explain from where are you again? Because some people, I just saw the comments. Please explain who you are. They are saying.
Okay, it's my pleasure to once more greet all of you and to briefly introduce myself. My name is Rasti Delizo. I am an international affairs analyst here in the Philippines and a longtime socialist activist with the Philippine Left Movement since 1989. And I'm currently a vice president of the Bukluran ng Manggagawang Pilipino, or BMP. And BMP is a revolutionary socialist political center of the Filipino working class movement.
Mga kasama mga kapatid, huwag kayong mag-alala dahil nakakaintindi po ng Pilipino si Rusty. Kaya kung magtatanong kayo, sasagutin niya kayo sa Ingles. Huwag lang po kayo magtaka dahil alam niyo na po, siya po ay isang Filipino-American. Tama ba, Rusty? You're a Filipino-American guy?
No, I've never set foot on American soil. I've never been to the U.S. I grew up in Iran. That's
Oh.
yes.
And that is common because especially Filipinos when they serve in the United States Armed Forces, most of the families. I have also friends who were born in Guam, who were born in like Iran, the Middle East, or in sometimes in Europe or Kuwait, just like that. So pagpatuloy natin po ang talakayan natin. Malapit na rin po tayo magtapos pero ang tinatalakay natin yung undercount. Sinabi nga ni Rusty kanina, natural, talagang babawasan nila ang bilang ng napatay nila o pinapatay nila dahil gusto nila panatiliin na ipakita na ang Pilipinas ay isang demokrasya at ang Pilipinas ay sumusunod sa batas. At nilinaw din kanina ni Rusty na hindi sumusunod sa batas. Ang sinusunod nila ay kanilang batas, no? What can you say about Duterte even before when he said that I'm willing to kill 6 million Jews? If they kill 3 million, I will do more just to save my country from the drug. So while his minions are undercounting it, he is exaggerating it. What can you say about it?
Clearly, many of the progressive organizations here in the Philippines at the time, and many of our comrades, myself included, publicly declared our outright opposition to then presidential candidate Rodrigo Duterte as early as during the electoral campaign period in 2016. And in fact, many of the various human rights defenders and progressive mass movement organizations and working class forces here directly mobilized on day one of the Duterte regime. That was July 1 of 2016. That was the first full official working day of the Duterte regime back then. And since then, for the next 6 years, our comrades never let up. And until today, with the new BBM regime, the Philippine mass movement and the Philippine human rights movement has been pursuing a consistent and persistent progressive agenda in order to once and for all change the social economic system here in the Philippines. And for organizations like mine, BMP, our agenda clearly is to establish a socialist Philippines. And what we aim for is systemic change. That is to have an alternative to the capitalist social economic system in the Philippines. And we started it also, we've been fighting for socialism for decades now. But just to hammer a point, kasamang art, my organization, BMP, is led by our chairperson, and his name is Calyodi de Guzman. Some of you might have heard of him. Calyodi de Guzman made history as the country's first socialist worker leader to have run for the president here in the country. Unfortunately, he didn't make it. BBM won, but nevertheless, that shows that our organization, BMP, is consistently not just fighting all forms of reaction in the country, but our aim is to actually replace the existing bourgeois capitalist state, which remains backward and underdeveloped and under the control of U.S. imperialism, with a socialist worker-led state in the future. And that is the one reason why we are consistently fighting for human rights in order to help liberate and emancipate all the oppressed and exploited working class masses here in the Philippines and even across the world.
So what can you say about Marcos regime? They are saying that they have a different approach on extrajudicial killing. They said there will be no more extrajudicial killing, and they say it's an human rights will always be upheld. What can you say about the current regime on extrajudicial killing?
Well, that's just a for show. Clearly, not everybody believes that. Many people don't believe it. In fact, um, I would even say that perhaps close to 100 uh, state-sanctioned killings have already happened, for the record, since day one of the BBM regime, and tomorrow will be Human Rights Day. So clearly, the war on drugs, as BBM himself said, will continue. Now, he never gave an open and clear-cut public order to his state security forces to stop the so-called, um, you could say, uh, wanton killings of suspected drug pushers, drug users, and whatever, including especially political activists, human rights defenders, journalists, and working class leaders. In fact, the Marcos regime continues to say that they want to get rid of the drug menace in the Philippines through a continuation of the drug war that the Duterte regime unleashed in 2016. And even if Marcos will give an open order to his state security forces, I am sure that the AFP soldiers and the PNP policemen and other state security forces will never abide by such an open order. I'll give you one example. Even during the Pinoy Aquino regime, who and as you know, he openly said that he stood for democracy similar to his own mother. Now, it was during his regime that a police officer, a police captain in public in uniform, directly and openly threatened me and my comrades with death. They said that if we misbehave, and he pointed his finger at me during the rally, then we will kill you. That's what he said in my face in
Oh,
English. And he filed a case against him at the National Police Commission, NAPOLCOM. And this case was brought to the attention of the international human rights organizations, especially with the United Nations Commission on Human Rights. So that only shows that regardless of who is in power, it's the state security forces and the nature and the capitalist class character of the Philippine state repressive apparatus that continues to behave uh, the way it has been behaving for decades now, because it is it's linked up to U.S. imperialism's global counterinsurgency warfare all across the world. And the Philippine state security forces have been largely trained and indoctrinated by U.S. military forces and military institutions. And that's the reason why presidents may come and go every 6 years or so, unless they're ousted earlier. But AFP and the PNP and intelligence services and other state security forces in the Philippines will continue to have a single mindset, which is to have a mindset that kills anybody who will question, even legitimately and rightfully, state policies which the Filipino masses and peoples will deem as questionable, which is their right to do so under the 1987 Constitution. But again, the Philippine state security forces have never behaved according to democratic norms and values.
Yeah, that's why before we go, before you give your closing remarks, I am saying I have been explaining the minions of uh, Bongbong Marcos are saying they abide by the rule of law, that that there will be no more extrajudicial killing. It's just like during the term of Duterte. His minions are undercounting it. Uh, they are not really divulging the real data on extrajudicial killing, while their boss, Duterte, is exaggerating it. He's saying there are almost 6 million addicts, drug addicts in the Philippines, and he will go after the drug lords. When what he was doing, he was bumping up all the competitors, his competition in this Duterte drug syndicate. So now I will give you the floor to sum up or give your closing remarks.
Well, okay. Thank you, Kasamang Art, and to all of your podcast viewers here. Uh, well, my closing statement will be brief. Tomorrow will mark the 74th, if I'm not mistaken, 74th commemoration of International Human Rights Day, since it was institutionalized on December 10, 1948, by the United Nations system. All across the world, human rights defenders and progressive activists and working class fighters for democracy will definitely unfurl their banners, our collective and unified banners for democracy, uh, social justice, and peace. And it is in this context that in the Philippines, by fighting for human rights, this will continue to be a major, if not a fundamental, form of struggle to if you may put it this way, lead the collective struggle toward genuine systemic change, because human rights is a not only a basic right, fundamentally speaking, but it is connected to many other inherent rights aside from civil and political rights. You also have economic, social, and cultural rights, and by having a state uphold its state obligations to protect and defend human rights, such as the Philippine state as a signatory to the UDHR of 1948. Therefore, it has to be held accountable for any state-based violations, and that is the reason why this will be a major moment. It'll be the first Human Rights Day activity to be commemorated by the Filipino public under the BBM regime, and therefore we will see, and let us see how committed the new BBM regime is to upholding human rights as the head of state and the signatory to international human rights laws. And as such, we also have to show that the progressive mass movement also continues to fight for all forms and all kinds of rights aside from exposing and opposing the human rights violations and injustices across our country. Our main agenda is to propose solutions. And by proposing solutions, we are also challenging many other basic sectors and basic masses here in the country to unite with the working class movement, the progressive movement, and other left forces to come up with a at least a progressive united front that can, in a single manner, ensure a unified political fighting force to advance genuine change, democracy, and social justice here in the Philippines. And that is exactly what organizations like BMP has committed itself to undertake now that we have an extension of the you could say the mad regimes. That's the Marcos, Arroyo, Duterte regimes. And clearly, we need to put a stop to this madness here in the Philippines. And this struggle will not be an easy one. It'll be a very difficult and long struggle ahead, but we can successfully and victoriously win in the end if we are able to unite our ranks and also collaborate our efforts and unify with other comrades and allies and progressive forces all across the world, including with organizations such as FARA there in the United States. So we thank you and we thank FARA and this Nomad podcast for inviting me to guest tonight on the occasion of International Human Rights Day here in the Philippines and around the world.
Do
Thank
you have
you
any
and good
activities?
day.
Can you invite the public if BMP or the partido na manggagawa eh, uh, and other groups have activities for December 10?
Yes, tomorrow there. Well, I don't have the full list with me, but many of the organizations will be converging at again a historic site in Manila. That's Menjola Bridge, front in Malacanang Palace, and that would be as early as 9 a.m. until the afternoon. So that would be a major point of political convergence and struggle to show our uh, unified broad ranks of democratic forces against all forms of anti-democratic and unjust political organizations and state-based forces that continue to want to destroy the values of democracy here in our country.
Thank you, Rusty. I would like to remind the public, manood din po kayo sa ano sa aming kapihan ni Arte at Ago. Diyan po, iyan na po ang papalit sa Nomad. Dahil kung ayaw nyo sumama sa oposisyon, dito po manood kayo. Diyan po tayo sa YouTube para mas malawak ang ating mararating. Kaya maraming salamat, Rusty. Natalakay natin ang undercounting sa kaso ng extrajudicial killing. Sinasabi natin, pinagloloko tayo ng gobyerno dahil imbis na sabihin nila kung ano ang tunay na nangyayari, nililis nila at binabago ang mga bilang, pinagloloko nila tayo sa bilang dahil ang gusto nilang bilangin yung limpak-limpak na salapi na nakukuha nila sa graft and corruption sa kanilang nilalahad ngayong Maharlika Wealth Fund at iba pa. Maraming salamat ulit, Rusty, at muli natin pagkikita sa mga talakayan dahil alam namin kasama pa rin namin kayo sa mga talakayan. Magandang gabi po. Maraming salamat, mga kababayan.
Thank you very much.
paliwanag natin, gusto natin yung panawagan na yan at babala na yan ng Korte Suprema sapagkat talagang umaabuso na eh. Grabe ho dito sa Pilipinas, yung troll na yan at yung mga vlogger na walang ya. Yung mga vlogger na walang ya, tinutukoy ko ha. Mga kaibigan, yung nagpaparatang na akala nila, pag nagparatang sila, karapatan nila yon. Gaya ng nasasaad sa konstitusyon. Ang sinasabi ho sa konstitusyon, hindi magparatang. Yung kalayaang binibigay sa saligang batas para sa lahat ng mamamayan, ay yun ho ay karapatang sa malayang pagpapahayag ng iyong saloobin. Hindi kasama ron ang paggawa ng fake news at pagparatang ng wala kang basihan. Yung pinararatangan mo na ang tao, kamukha ni Lorraine Badoy. Di ba? Meron pang pangyayari yan na mga kaibigan yung asawa nung isang judge ay sinabihan nila na sabi nila ay dati raw kadre ng MPA. Akalain ninyo yun? Dahil yung judge ay, mga kaibigan, ay nag-dismiss ng kaso laban sa mga pinaratangan.
Virus, coronavirus.
Hindi.
Magpunta tayo sa magpa-test